All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking what is basically the ultimate rulebook for society. We're going to look at this really fascinating dynamic, the tension between the absolute power of the law to punish and the foundational constitutional rights that are built specifically to protect you. It's a super delicate balance of power, and honestly, understanding exactly how it works is absolutely vital.
So I want you to imagine this scenario. Let's say you do something today that is perfectly legal, no problems at all. But tomorrow, the legislature suddenly passes a new law making that exact action a major crime. Can the state actually come after you, arrest you, and throw you in jail for what you did yesterday? I know, it's a high-stakes hypothetical, but it gets right to the heart of why understanding these legal principles actually matters to every single one of us.
Here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover number 1, no crime without a law. 2, interpreting the rules. 3, inherently wrong versus forbidden. 4, the reach of the law. And finally, number 5, the constitutional shield.
Okay, let's start with Section 1, no crime without a law.
Now, you've probably heard lawyers throw around this super intimidating Latin phrase, nolum crimen nulla poena sine lege. It sounds incredibly dense, but when we actually demystify it, it translates to a really simple, incredibly powerful rule. Literally, no crime without law. What the Penal Code is saying here is that the state absolutely cannot punish you unless a specific law existed prior to you committing the act. There's no such thing as secret retroactive crimes here. The law literally has to be on the books first.
But consider the reverse of that concept for a second. What happens if a law just goes away? Well, if the legislature entirely absolutely repeals a penal law, it actually strips the court of its authority to punish you. Since the repeal is a legislative act that basically makes legal what used to be illegal, the offense just ceases to exist. Legally speaking, unless there's a specific saving clause keeping those old cases alive, it is as if the offender never even committed the act in the first place. Pretty wild, right?
Moving right along to Section 2, interpreting the rules.
So, when courts are inevitably forced to interpret a murky statute, they're guided by the pro reo principle, or in dubio pro reo, basically when in doubt, favor the accused. If a judge looks at a law and sees two possible interpretations, say one is really harsh and hurts the defendant and the other is much more favorable, the rule of lenity absolutely demands that they adopt the lenient one. This isn't just a suggestion, by the way. It ties directly back to your constitutional guarantee of the presumption of innocence.
Which brings us to the crucial point of answering our hook question from earlier. Generally speaking, new penal laws apply prospectively, meaning to the future, and they can't punish you for past actions. But if a new law is passed that is actually more lenient or favorable to the accused, it absolutely has a retroactive effect. You get the benefit. And this applies even if a final sentence has already been handed down and you are actively serving time, well, provided you aren't a habitual criminal, of course.
All right, on to Section 3. Inherently wrong versus forbidden.
In criminal law, we essentially have two big categories of offenses, mala in se and mala prohibita. Mala in se refers to acts that are naturally wrong or inherently immoral. We're talking things like murder or theft. For these, criminal intent or mens rea is a mandatory element. Because of that, acting in good faith can actually be a valid defense. On the flip side, we have mala prohibita. These are acts that aren't inherently evil, but they're simply forbidden by special laws. Think of things like driving without a license. For these, your intent is totally immaterial. It honestly doesn't matter if you meant well. If you broke the rule, you're guilty. And good faith is absolutely no defense at all.
That takes us to Section 4, the reach of the law.
So there are three cardinal principles governing just how far criminal law can actually reach. First up is generality. This means the law binds everyone who resides or even just sojourns in the country, regardless of age, sex, or creed. Now, there are a few exceptions for foreign diplomats under international law, but mostly it applies to everyone. Second is territoriality. Penal laws are only enforceable within the nation's actual territory, so the land, atmosphere, interior waters, and maritime zone. And third is prospectivity, which we touched on earlier. Laws apply only to future acts.
However, when we look a little closer at territoriality, there are some seriously fascinating extraterritorial exceptions where the law reaches completely outside the country's borders. It's like the state projecting the sword of justice globally to counter specific threats. For instance, if a crime happens on a Philippine ship or airship, the nation's laws still apply no matter where it is. Or if someone is forging the national currency abroad, or say a public officer commits an offense while exercising their duties overseas, they can absolutely be prosecuted back home. This also applies to extreme crimes against national security or the law of nations, like piracy.
Finally, we arrive at Section 5, the constitutional shield.
This is the big one, the ultimate foundational constitutional guarantee. Due process basically means the state can't just snatch you up and throw you in a dark cell without strictly following the rules. Procedural due process mandates that you absolutely must be officially informed of the charges against you, you must be given a genuine, real opportunity to defend yourself, and crucially, you can only be convicted by a competent court with lawful jurisdiction, and it has to be based on untainted evidence, no shortcuts allowed.
The Constitution also sets a hard boundary. Lawmakers cannot act as judges. They are strictly forbidden from passing what's called a bill of attainder. This is basically a legislative measure that singles out a specific person, or maybe an easily identifiable group, and inflicts punishment on them through a legislative decree. It entirely bypasses a judicial trial. The power to punish has to go through the courts. Politicians simply cannot legislate your guilt out of thin air.
And connecting directly back to our rule of prospectivity, we have the absolute constitutional ban on ex post facto laws. This ensures lawmakers can't just change the rules of the game after the fact to disadvantage a citizen. So, they can't punish you for an act that was totally innocent when you committed it. On top of that, they cannot pass laws that retroactively aggravate a crime or slap you with a greater punishment than what was originally set. They also can't alter the rules of evidence so that it suddenly requires less testimony to secure your conviction than it did at the time of the offense.
Finally, the Constitution acts as a shield against excessive fines and cruel, degrading, or inhuman punishment. But we really need to understand what that actually means in practice. This prohibition focuses on the form or the character of the punishment, not necessarily the duration. So standard penalties like life imprisonment or reclusion perpetua do not violate this rule. What is strictly prohibited is extreme physical or psychological torment that literally strips a person of their humanity. Historically, we're talking about things like burning at the stake or disemboweling. Similarly, financial fines only cross the line into unconstitutional territory when they are flagrantly, plainly oppressive, and completely out of proportion to the actual offense.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final thought. We've seen how the state defines crimes, interprets the rules, and projects its power, essentially the sword. But we've also just seen the absolute ironclad limits placed upon that power by due process, the ban on ex post facto laws, and the strict rules against cruel punishment. That's your shield. The constant tension between these two forces is literally what keeps a free society functioning. So, considering everything we unpacked today, where exactly do you think state power should end and individual liberty begin? It's a delicate balance for sure, and definitely one worth pondering as you navigate the world. Keep exploring these frameworks, and as always, stay curious.